Another reunion on the night of the 12th day. It was the crew from the observatory with that cursed logbook. Told them to just give it to me and not worry about it. Oh, and don't worry about where the researchers who used to live here are, or what happened to those who stayed in the Atrobates. Ah, and Winterhome, yes, no use having that weight on your shoulders. Not that they knew it was a weight, quite yet. In fact, that night I finally gave the order for scouts to go visit the Silent City. They were flabbergasted that I refused to write them a message to give to the captain there. Needed to save paper for the radiograph. Told them that when they arrived in Winterhome they would know exactly what it was they needed to say, and with that cryptic reassurance I hurried them away before anyone else tried to go with them. With that, the fuse was lit. You must understand that I was in a deathly mood that night, looking over the scientists' apocalyptic discovery. Knowing that all of us would die, what harm was there in letting people find out about all those lucky enough to have already checked out? This was a less rhetorical question than I imagined, as it would turn out. It was that same frustrated mire I was in that led me to snap at Painsworth when she visited the lab in the depth of night. I was angered from the first moment she entered, as she refused to say anything and took some of my precious paper to write me a message instead. I just barely avoided snatching her pencil away when I saw what she was writing. She had contracted a serious infection and was mute. I quickly sanded down a stretch of timber and had her continue her message on that. The gist of it was that all the new arrivals were afflicted by coughs, crawlers, and crystallization, as she put it. She should have been a writer. We had only a few doctors, and they weren't in a much better state than her, and many people were going untreated, which of course made their maladies more of a strain on us all by the day. In all honesty, I didn't care. More and more of my time was spent indoors, so my own ails were not those a physician could mend. That was about as far as my empathy would stretch on the matter. Told her to make room for the weak on the floor. She started writing a request for another radiator and more canvas, but then I really did take her leaden voice away and show her out. The mess hall chat spoke for the poor woman plenty, so that morning I took my food out to eat in the lab. There I chuckled alone to myself as I read the transmission received from the Winterhome coal mine. Confusion about why no one was there and the machines were abandoned. Dead automatons, broken pumps, and yet sled after sled of unused coal were waiting to go. Go they did, to New London, with good gear stripped off the machines by the men I lied to about having orders from one Lord Harrowton, Winterhome's richest man. Buggers appeared at the lip of the crater within the day, thanks to some compression engines they'd rigged up from the scrap. Seeing how earnestly they were trying to help threw me into a stupor of different character but equal depth to the one I was already in. The black miasma of our doom was settling, and with my blindness resolving, I saw that passion for life flickering in the eyes of the ashen husks before me. It was a wake-up call. I had a job to do, and I had to do it whether I was certain we would all perish regardless or not. I think it even said as much in that old captain's manual the General had given me. To ensure the continuation of British civilization, and indeed the British people as a higher species, and/or die trying. He had a darker sense of humour even than me, but I suppose his course for humour was better, going with the brass to the colonies. Would have still been above freezing point near the equator around that time. Not for long, as you of course know, but I am getting ahead of myself, aren't I? I used my newfound sense of responsibility to simultaneously distract my mind from reality and improve it. To make amends to Painsworth, I embarked on a 2-day project to build not just another canvas field hospital, but a timber and steel infirmary building, draft-proofed and lined with radiators, and stocked with a steam core to heat its own water on demand, an essential thing for treating frostbite and bacterial infestation alike. It was the biggest construction project we'd attempted, but all took well to it given the reward on offer. and with the automaton's help, it was well within our scope. Once we realised just how much we could do with all the tools and materials we'd been stockpiling, we were carried on to build an extension to the lab as well. Those few hours, perhaps half a day in all, were something of a marvel. Everyone saw, at last, just what all this hard work I'd been lumping onto them could do, and that we weren't just starving, we were building. We were, if you will, ensuring the continuation of British civilization, etc. Those optimistic times were capped off when I announced that all meals were now to be served with a shot of, we called the stuff New London Secret Special, but in essence, moonshine. People cheered and hooted and congratulated our amateur brewers, who had worked for several days to get that perfect recipe to the sweet spot where it brought your death closer yet made it seem further away. There was so much cheer that I truly felt that my sourness of the previous couple of days and my firmness of the previous couple of weeks was now being seen from a different perspective, if not being entirely forgiven. Then the screaming began. First it was a shrill cry coming from the open window of the lab, heard by the crowd I was addressing from the generator scaffold. Then a chorus of crying children came from that same window. I rushed up to find a few of the childminders had brought the kids up to the top floor to show them the radiography table. Knew I should have just locked them all in a box. They'd seen the message stuttering from the typewriter before their very eyes. Mayday, it began. Winterhome, all dead. So, that was my plan to get everyone drunk before I revealed the truth, quite literally, out the window. By the time I was there to confirm my fears, the children had passed the main thrust of the argument onto everyone else, and the assembly outside was at once turned into a panicked mob. Doom and gloom, as you would imagine. Many stormed up to me there at the radiograph and demanded an explanation. Showed them the rest of the message, unsweetened and raw. They'd run out of food, started fighting each other, and when their captain had clamped down, they outright rebelled. In the chaos, someone left the generator safety vents closed, and in essence, killed them all. There's a saying you used to hear at dinner sometimes, something to the effect that the mind of a man is a great and glorious thing, yet the mind of men is a comical beast. That is how I think we can explain how the reaction of my crew to this news was to immediately begin fighting each other and accosting me with more than just foul curses. Ollie and Chalk had rightful déjà vu and rushed up the stairs to my side. They had their rifles in hand with bayonets attached. I ordered them to remove said blades. This was not to be like Kamasi, no matter the similarities. With looks of equal disdain for the gunman and myself, the crew stamped back out into the street, but the end to their shouting and moshing was nowhere in sight. The most insane talk arose among them. Someone was calling for us to all pack up and return to London, claiming that we were never meant to survive out here without support, and that London was surely the best spot for we that remained to all rally. It was as if they hadn't seen London, buried in ash, ice and corpses, trundle back over the horizon as we rushed to escape it. Again, surely no one believed it truly themselves, yet together they had enough belief for the idea to tread water. Not everyone was so deluded, yet I could not thank God for such wisdom on their part, for I knew He had firmly taken the other side. It occurred to me that I could redirect the wishful thinking of those would-be rebels to place their faith in God's plan for us. Yet, how was I to convince people to believe that which I not only did not believe myself, but knew for a fact to be false? God was gone. Whatever was up there now, doing all this to us, was unrecognizable to God's faithful. This was the devil's world now, and to spare that power of thought was to embolden it to even greater evil. No, that wouldn't do. We needed a more practical solution. I needed to give Ollie and Chalk a promotion, and beneath them form a police force from those still capable of rational thought. Gave Six the order to fashion some weapons from what we had, and rounded up 10 guards to patrol the streets. The so-called Londoners were conspiring at every hour to steal whatever they could and make a break for it. My watchman had a simple motto: "We are London." It was composed to confuse and inspire in equal measure. I considered the Londoners to be fools of the highest order, yet I was going to give them a chance. Connaught would have just killed them all. Hell, perhaps Gloucester would have just killed them all, or sent them to die elsewhere. But I was not a duke or a lord, nor was I still a major or a military governor. I was the captain, and as much as the phrase "We are London" held truth, "I am London" was the case also. In other words, I didn't have the stomach to kill the rebels, this time. I was to pay the price for my meek mercy at once. The Londoners stirred people up in a fury, a riot you could say, and I was, for a portion of the evening on that 14th day, besieged inside the lab. The demands were that New London live up to its name. Indeed, the old Blacknell gripe that we'd been trying to industrialise ourselves while most still slept in frigid tents was back, and I don't mean to suggest it was unreasonable. That was to change. Moreover, to distract our city from the fact even cushy Winterhome had veered off the verge of death, I intended to begin a project of urbanization, you could call it. Another steam compressor was to be built. More watchmen were to be recruited. Meat, heat, and bobbies on the beat. Of these 3 promises I made that night, the latter was perhaps the most profound. The Londoner movement had shattered trust among the crew. Everyone was wondering who was going to steal their stuff and run away to London in a mad panic, who was going to force them not to run away and doom them all, and, for the majority, whether the dream of a better life back in civilization in the tamed south could be real. Even I entertained the possibility. I imagined a wall of ice and steel around a coal depot, guards gunning down all those who approached, as the army had been doing when we left. With the right equipment and good scavenging, a small group could survive like that for as long as the preserved food lasted, maybe years if they killed enough outsiders. I'm sure they would appreciate the Londoners bringing them down some polar bear steaks for a little gourmet dining over their corpses. The more I thought about how stupid they were, the less passionate I felt about actually trying to win them around and keep the damn crew, my crew, alive and bloody well kicking. The night brought some relief from the madness, and not just because of the now fully operational pub. Further reports from Winterhome revealed that our team had found a number of survivors and given them a map to find us. Apparently they had refused any other help, probably in quite a state after whatever they went through. Gave us some coy remark about surviving by eating lichen, as if we couldn't deal with the truth. So there you go, they hadn't all died, so that brought the Londoner rhetoric down a rung by rather cynical means. The better news came from the opposite direction. Our scouts had been heading west for the coast, and reported that they'd stumbled upon a camp full of dead. Bear with me on this one. The dead were all missing limbs, but bore metal prosthetics in their place, all proudly labelled as Tesla Industries products, the same Tesla Industries that had manufactured the difference engine in our automaton. The flags in their belongings confirmed it. These people were Yanks. It wasn't just Britain with the gumption to make refuges in Greenland. The writings among the effects of the dead implied that Nikola Tesla himself was here, perhaps just 20 miles from New London, running a colony of his own on the other side of the icy bay in which the Atrebates had floundered. We would have seen them on our way in had the ash been thinner that morning. Letting no one talk of A, why the camp we'd found was full of corpses, or B, why the Yanks hadn't discovered us either in all this time, Tesla's crew became the new Babbage crew, and we had reason to stay the course. Those who stubbornly claimed that an Englishman should never tolerate help from an American would be quite happy, one supposes, with what lay in wait for us on those haunted western shores.